Hey guys, this is Miss Arlequin, and in today's lesson we're going to talk about how we can craft an effective concluding paragraph for our informative essays. Alright, so our goal in today's lesson is to be able to find out the different elements that make up concluding paragraphs and what makes them effective, and then to take what we've learned to write our own effective concluding paragraphs. Alright, so basically a concluding paragraph is the last paragraph of your writing. It is the paragraph where you are wrapping up your argument and you're leaving your reader with some final thoughts. So in general, your conclusion should be the reverse of your introduction. So what you're going to do is you're going to start by restating your thesis. And when you restate it, you want to make sure that you're not just saying the exact same thing as the thesis statement from the introduction. You want to use slightly different words, so you really want to think about ways that you can kind of sum up the main argument of your essay in a different way than when you first let your reader know that this is what your essay was going to be about. A lot of conclusions will then have a brief summary of some of the key points that the writer made in the body paragraphs. And again, this is not meant to be repetitive. You don't want to repeat word for word your topic sentences or start to repeat the evidence you gave in your body. You want to think of new ways that you can kind of sum up what the major points were throughout your work. And then as you can see from our inverted triangle, as you start to develop your conclusion, you are getting more and more general, more and more broad. And so what you want to start to do is you want to answer the so what question for your reader. And the so what question is your reader has read the essay, they're up to the last paragraph, and in their head they're thinking, so what? Why did I just spend all this time reading this essay? What's the point? How does it really impact me, the reader, my life, my thinking? What am I supposed to do with this information now that I've read it? Is it valuable to me? Can I apply it somewhere in real life or in my life as a reader or a writer? And so usually the last few sentences of your conclusion would be the place where you are answering that so what question, where you are explaining to your reader why what you wrote is important. Alright, so there are a couple of steps that we can follow for writing a concluding paragraph. And the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to restate your thesis, again using slightly different words. So I'm going to use the example essay that I've been modeling throughout these videos. It is an essay about the chaser and the way that John Collier uses irony. So for the ending of that essay, I might restate my thesis by saying, as you can see, the irony in the short story The Chaser helps illustrate the desperation Alan felt in trying to win Diana's love. Without this ironic situation, the reader might not realize. And so then I'm going to elaborate on that sentence by talking about how the irony actually adds to the story and how if the irony didn't exist, there would be key details or key points that the reader of the story would not know. And again, some essays, not all, restate some of the most important points that were made in the body paragraphs. And so this is optional. It doesn't necessarily work for every essay, and it's not mandatory for every concluding paragraph, but it is a very common strategy that many people use for their conclusions. Alright, so step 2, I'm going to answer the so what question. So I'm going to show my readers why what I've written is important and show them how it is meaningful and useful and it can be relevant to their lives. So for the same essay, I might start off by saying, it's important to realize how powerful desperation can be because, and I'm going to make a text-to-world connection. I'm going to talk about how people in life often feel desperate, and when you're feeling desperate, it might cause you to do certain things you might regret. Or another way that I can do this is by stating, after reading this story, people can learn that being so desperate can be a dangerous thing. And I might even elaborate a little bit on the sentence and talk about some of the real world situations where being desperate can lead to some dangerous consequences. And then finally, I'm going to redirect my readers. I'm going to give the reader of my essay something to think about, a way that they can use what I've written in the real world. So, in other words, what they can learn from the character's actions, or what I want them to do with this information. Now, the best way to do this is to make a connection, again, between the story and the real world. So an example would be, sometimes in life people do something that makes them feel guilty. Instead of hiding their actions, the best solution would be, or if you ever find yourself in a situation where guilt is overwhelming you, the best thing to do would be. Now, these would not be my sentences for an essay on the chaser. These actually come from a conclusion that talked about a story whose main theme was guilt. If I wanted to do the same thing with the chaser and my irony essay, then I would talk about how sometimes in life people feel desperate, and instead of doing something you might regret, this is what you should do instead. So basically, I'm telling my reader to learn from the mistakes that the character I wrote about made. Alright, so let's look at those steps all put together into one sample concluding paragraph. Again, this comes from the essay I've been modeling for you in all the videos, and my thesis was that John Collier's short story, The Chaser, illustrates that trying to fake true love will only lead to regret. In conclusion, the story The Chaser demonstrates the power desperation can have over a person's actions. Alan ignored the old man's warnings and ended up learning his lesson. That's why when he went back to the old man to ask for the poison, the love Diana gave Alan didn't work out so well. So before taking desperate measures in order to secure the person or thing you love, you really have to think about what's going to happen after. How far would you be willing to go for what you love? So I'd like you to think about how this student has followed the 3 steps for writing a conclusion. Where do you see the student restating their thesis using different words? Where do you see them answering the so what question? And where do you see them redirecting their readers with some text-to-world connections and leaving them something to think about? Okay, so now it is time to take what you've learned about concluding paragraphs and apply them to your own writing. So first, you're going to log into Google Drive. You're going to write your concluding paragraph. When you are done, you're going to use the self-revision checklist to evaluate your draft and begin making revisions. And then if a classmate is also done, and it does not necessarily just have to be your elbow partner, it could be any classmate who is done at a similar time to you, you can share your document with them and begin peer revising using Google Drive documents. If you need some further support on concluding paragraphs, there will be some links to some other videos in Edmodo, and you can also go to the Google Drive student resource folder. There's an entire folder on concluding paragraphs, including some samples and some further explanatory handouts.